Well, coming from number 10 as well, Mr. Cameron's spokesman has said he wholeheartedly defends the rights of editors to make editorial decisions when asked about the publication of that cartoon. Well, let's discuss that further, whether the media ought to publish images of the Prophet Muhammad. I've got Paul Connew, the former editor of the Sunday Mirror, and Rafiq Hayat from the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association. They're both in our central London studio. Very good afternoon to you both. Well, Paul Connew, first of all, should it be published, and should it be republished by media outlets, particularly in the UK?
I think it should. Although offensive to many people, not just the Muslim community, I think free speech is vital. And not only that, that the UK media have perhaps been cowed to a certain extent, or certainly over cautious and oversensitive in the last few days, although one or two this morning have used small images of tomorrow's cover of Charlie Hebdo. But in a sense, the public have a right to see the story presented in its full context. And those cartoons did actually trigger, and I use the word deliberately, did trigger the outrage, in Paris last week. And for that reason alone, I think it is a good reason to actually publish or republish the cartoons. I mean, as an editor, I might well have rejected those cartoons if produced for your own newspaper. But in the context of a global story, I think failing to do so, didn't present the full picture.
Okay, well, Mr. Hayat, what's your opinion? Is now the time, or is any time the right time to publish cartoons like these?
Well, firstly, we need to understand what is freedom of speech. I mean, in this country, we have laws against hate speech, against all kinds of other things. We therefore have firstly to define what is freedom of speech. I think as far as the religious communities are concerned, and that includes the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jewish people, to offend any of their prophets would be hurtful to them. And therefore, why do we need to do that? We have to understand we live in a multicultural, multi-religious society. And why gratuitously do we have to go and abuse the leaders of these various religious communities does not make any sense at all. If we want peace in society and if we want peace in this world, surely we must be moving towards those actions which prevent inflating the emotions of people. We know we are completely with the people of France at the moment who have suffered badly at the hand of terrorists. We too are affected as Muslims from these terrorists. Therefore, really, this is across the board. Everyone is affected by it.
Okay.
What we need to understand is what is freedom of speech,
right,
and whether it is right to publish this just because we want to express.
Yeah, thanks for making that point, Mr. Head. I want to make this a discussion, so I want to bring Paul Connew back on that because it's interesting, isn't it? Developments in France on this issue that Mr. Hayat touches on about how do you define freedom of speech, and there are limits. We all accept there are limits to it because at the same time as this is going on, that controversial comedian, I suppose he calls himself, Dieudonné, has been investigated by French police because he's published or tweeted a thought saying that he is je suis one of the killers, the killer in the kosher supermarket. Now, if it's free speech for Charlie Hebdo, should he have free speech? It does offend a lot of people.
Well, satire, by its very definition, offends some people. And Charlie Hebdo, whether you like it or not, targeted many different areas. Not just Muslims. If it was Muslims only, I would feel very strongly against them. But they also lambast, lampoon, satire, the Christian, Roman Catholic faith, Hinduism, the Jewish faith, politicians, the establishment, big business. So they're a multi-headed, satirical magazine. And the paradox here, even if you actually loathe Charlie Hebdo, is the killers last week this sounds flip, but they have become almost the promotions department, of that magazine, a magazine that was struggling for survival. It sells only 60,000, was possibly facing going to the wall, now is become almost a global superstar flagship for free speech in many people's eyes, with a 3 million print run.
Well, I just want to stay with you, but on that issue of offence, are you more or less saying to those in the Muslim community, and it will particularly be within elements of the Muslim community who are offended by this, you're saying more or less you don't get the joke, this is satire?
No, satire, I think, is an integral part of free speech and democracy. I think many of those cartoons were offensive, and I'm sure if I were a Muslim, I'd find them offensive. But you have to accept that the laws of France and most European democracies allow satire, even cruel and offensive satire, and I think that is where the free speech issue comes to the fore here.
Well, what direct effect, Mr. Hayat, do you think it could have? There are more Kouachi brothers out there, we know that. Could it radicalise more people?
Yes, I think so. I think we have to be very careful in a free society. As freedom of speech must come with responsibility. And I think that we have to make sure that when we make these type of cartoons, it is going to affect a lot of people, and it will incite the emotions of young men, Muslim men, and then you see that they are radicalized because their emotions are raised, and then we have the unfortunate events of what's happened in Paris last week. Therefore, we must actually look at what type of society we want to create. If you want to create a peaceful society, then we have hate speech laws in this country that prevent us from doing a lot of things. And therefore, why do we need to go and offend the leaders of different faiths? And the same would apply whether it was Prophet Jesus, whether it was Prophet Moses. I think the people will be offended equally if those prophets were offended. Therefore, I think as a society, we need to understand where are we going, what do we need to create, how do we create a peaceful and harmonious society? It's certainly not by offending people, I don't think.
Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your profound thoughts. Rafiq, Hayat and Paul Connew there. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this is Sky News. Coming up, a shocking